Well, how was that, Kelly?
Oh, it was amazing. So many insights.
Look, it was so fantastic you could join us. For those of you that don't know, Kelly joins us, or did join us tonight, with over 20 years of expertise in tech and AI, and really that intersection of the retail sector as well. So pioneering AI personalisation platforms and advocating for digital inclusion. Kelly has supported numerous businesses in digital growth and co-founded the Digital Inclusion Project. So I've got some questions for you. First of all, Kelly, can AI tools in education ever be truly unbiased, or are they inherently perpetuating systematic inequalities and biases?
Oh, that's a big question. No, they can't, unfortunately, sadly, which is something the field in which I work a lot in. And the reason is because the algorithms are based on human. I mean, if we remember that AI is only trying to be human, that's the whole point of it. It's natural language. It's trying to be like us. And inherently, as human beings, we are biased. And the data it is being trained on is extremely biased for a number of reasons. One, because it's being trained on data that is in the cloud. And the data in the cloud historically was developed and delivered by people in affluent areas, and therefore there is a whole ream of issues and complexities that go with that. But if you look at things like Amazon recently scrapped its recruitment. There was an AI recruitment tool it was using, and it scrapped it because it realized that because it had been trained on past resumes, and most of those past resumes, or a high percentage, were male, the women were getting discarded. So it got rid of that tool. There's another study that was done quite recently where there was misidentification at a rate of 34% for women of colour compared to less than 1% for white males. Wow. So unfortunately and sadly, you can't get rid of the bias because of the data it's been trained on. But I think we can use it in smart and intelligent ways, and we can try and build out the algorithms to be less biased, definitely.
Yeah. And is there something in that around the critical thinking that's required of our students too, when they're, for them to understand these biases and how it is just inherent and built in?
100%. I think there's two things for me that need to happen for that to change or begin to change, or, to impact the algorithms. One is we need a wider range of people building out these tools. Yes. So we need more women in AI. Yeah. We need more diversity in AI, because at the moment, again, there's only 22% of women in AI. So that's a big challenge. The second piece is when we use the tools, thinking about it from an inclusivity lens. So if we're using it for recruitment or content generation, whether that be images or you're building out an app, talking to it in natural language, but asking it to take out the bias and being conscious of the tools that are still driving bias and not personalised.
Yeah. With that human element, there has been a little bit, I've been reading on LinkedIn this week around removing the niceties of talking to your AI tool. So people saying please and thank you, and saying actually strip that out.
Yeah.
It's not a human.
Right.
You want it to respond to you. You don't want it to have an out by asking it, could you please do this for me, rather than telling it what to do. What's your perspective on that?
Well, that's interesting. So I've got, when robots take over the world, I will be seen as someone who's very polite, and therefore they may not take me first.
I love it.
So I'm all for being nice to the robots. No, in all seriousness, again, we're training the beast.
Yes.
So if we're not using please and thank yous and unbiased language and things, we're training it not to be polite. So I'm actually a big believer in using please and thank yous. I treat AI like an employee. So I have multiple employees in my AI world, multiple agents. And I would never tell an employee to go do something.
No,
I would talk to it politely. So I think we should train it in the way that we want it to then train us when it turns the table.
Excellent. I'm with you on that. Fantastic. And finally, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, I think firstly not keeping up. Like even though I'm in the space, I'm reading every day, and I'm
I know you're very active on LinkedIn.
Very active, even though I'm constantly, and I play with the tools a lot.
Yeah,
Not
great.
keeping up is a fear, is a real fear. I think the other fear is that some of the brands and companies that I work with is not being able to get them on the journey quick enough.
Right, yeah.
Because some of them I can see that their business models will be disrupted at some point very, very soon. And if they don't jump on the bandwagon and continue to bury their heads in the sands, I think it will be an issue. So they're probably the main things. Not that robots will take over the world. I'm a tech optimist, I have to be.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
me too. But, I think it's the same in the education sector.
Yeah.
We're seeing some schools just burying their heads in the sand.
Yeah.
And at Redlands here, we're sort of embracing it.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Thank you.
Lovely to be here.
Wow, Jake, what did you think? Wasn't it a great night?
Fantastic panel and a great audience. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on board. We know that you're an award-winning researcher. You come to us from UNSW tonight, and you are very focused on developing generative AI for enhanced teaching and learning. I know your tools have been used by hundreds and thousands of students, and so it was great to have you as part of our panel. Now I've got some questions for you. Big tech companies are starting to act like powerful nations. So is AI becoming a kind of digital colonization where control is held by just a few?
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely important risk that we should be thinking about. Big tech always wants to build a moat. And what we mean by this is the safeguards around their IP, around their technology that they think no one else can compete with. So Google has dominated search, Meta has dominated social media, and OpenAI wants to dominate generative AI. That means the risk is we're at the mercy of these large tech companies and how they control how our students use AI. This means that we can't build these pedagogical safeguards around these tools. So if we want to make sure that our students get some assistance from these tools but don't get outright answers, we would lose that ability to influence how well these systems do that. And really, we can't trust big tech to have student learning at their imperative. So what I think is really important, it's not game over. In fact, the Australian government is investing in pedagogical sovereign AI. That's some of the work that I work on in my research projects. And so I think we need to push for investment into capability to have generative AI models because they're clearly valuable even in learning, but we need to build them with educational safeguards, and we can do that.
Fantastic. Well, where do we start? So once we've got the investment,
where do we start? The important thing I think is the data. Right, to build large language model based systems, which these technologies are based on, you need data sets to train them. Yeah. What we really need is a large data set of good examples of educational behaviours from these models. And so we're building this at UNSW. We have a significant grant from the government to go ahead. But the challenge, I think, will be around schools and how do we safely share data? How do we make sure it's private? How do we not fall down these data privacy loopholes that we have fallen down in the past? We have to protect the data.
Yes.
But if we don't get together and use our data and create our own models that run on Australian servers that aren't for profit, then we don't really have a chance at competing. So it's going to be a lot of policy work, but it's absolutely possible.
Great. That's good news then. Fantastic. Now, another question for you. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? Yeah, a lot, as you might be able to see. So assessment is one thing that does really worry me. Where do we strike that balance around, how much could a student do, a graduate do, someone in the workforce be able to do on their own, without generative AI, without technology, without the internet? And how do we make sure that we assess students in a way that verifies students are capable of doing the work that we're accrediting them to be able to do? There's natural examples of medicine and engineering, right? I don't really want my pacemaker, the code on my pacemaker built by a student who relies on generative AI, no matter how capable that generative AI is. I think it's an issue about assurance and responsibility. So that's something I don't know where it will fall. So that keeps me up at night.
I think a lot of teachers
Yeah,
will be able to
absolutely.
relate to that. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us tonight.
It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Liam. Thank you so much for participating in our panel tonight.
Thank you for having me.
No, it was a great event, and I think everyone's feeling very excited and positive about the future of AI, particularly at Redlands. So for those of you that don't know, Liam Petersen is one of our school captains here at Redlands and is a passionate advocate for AI's positive impact, having developed Moot, an AI mental health companion. Through his academic work, Liam also explores AI's potential for global change. So thank you for stepping into this space straight after your IB exams this week too, Liam. Great effort. So I've got a couple of quick questions for you. So Liam, is the integration of AI in classrooms a threat to the traditional role of teachers, potentially rendering them obsolete?
Yeah, well, I think I think AI has a lot of very interesting potential in the classroom. I think removing teachers entirely is probably, I can't see it happening. I think it's very interesting in the States, for example. There's a school called Alpha School where they do integrate AI tutoring. It's one of the core sort of values of what they do at the school, where they sort of do 2 hours of tutoring a day. And then the teacher's role becomes more of that social and emotional guide. So I think in the long term, I certainly think that's probably where we're headed, where that tutoring, that one-on-one sort of personalized learning at each student sort of level is certainly a huge potential in the long term for AI in the classroom.
Yeah.
And like the results from that school, the kids are in the top 1% nationally.
Wow.
They're growing at 2 to 3 times their peers. So yeah, I think it's very exciting.
Worthy of consideration then.
Yes, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, in this new world of AI that we're all grappling with and it's changing so quickly, what keeps you up at night?
Well, at the moment, my exams, but
Silly question.
But no. Well, I think for me, one of the big problems as a young person is climate change, which, sort of probably a lack of universal effort to address that. And I just see AI as a really exciting way to work towards these big social issues. It's like, climate change, the ability to handle data and find solutions. I mean, I think there is a huge potential for, it's exciting, but also, it's concerning because it works both ways. There's a big environmental impact of AI too. So yeah, I think it's exciting, but it also is a bit, nervous.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight, and I hope you sleep well tonight anyway.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Amy, I hope you enjoyed our panel tonight. It was very exciting. We were thrilled to have you join us, coming over from Adelaide and taking the time out of your very important Year 12 classes. For those of you that don't know Amy is recognised for her leadership in AI and education reform. She champions a future-focused approach to AI in schools and is currently co-authoring a book on AI. So, Amy, whilst writing your book, you discovered that there is a stark divide between schools which outright ban AI and those which embrace it. What advice would you give to school leaders and our education ministers and decision makers to address this inequity?
Look, first thing is what I've realised is that the attitude of the schools and the teachers really have a huge impact on the attitude of students to AI. And I think the first and most important thing is realising that AI should stop being treated as a luxury, but as a literacy. And so, like any digital literacy, it's essential for future readiness. And that means that it needs to be taught in schools and not banned. And I think one way we need to do that is have some kind of digital toolkit, some AI learning that's really accessible to everyone so that all schools can use it and it can help with that equitable access. So whether that's examples of how to use AI, ethical dilemmas with it, because of course that's a huge concern for a lot of people. and also having a big focus on professional development of teachers. My school's just finished a survey for all senior school students, year 7 to 12, on AI and their use of it. And what I found most interesting, and I expected it, was that how teachers portray AI, whether that's through telling students they have permission to use it, showing examples, that has the biggest impact on a student's skill in use of AI and how they feel about it. So I think that is a really important aspect to it. And I mean, as a student, like, you can tell when you're not being prepared for the future. And a lot of students who aren't being taught about AI realize that there's that gap. There was this one event I was at where I was talking about AI in education. And this one girl came up to me and she was like, oh, at my school, when you're even suspected of using AI, doesn't have to be proven, you're given a flat 0.
Wow.
And that really shocked me because she was like, then so many kids are scared to even touch it. They won't go near it. And the thing is, that's not going to be reflected on a school report card. But as soon as you leave the school, you realise that you're not ready for the future.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think it's really just being aware that it needs to be taught and not banned.
Yeah. And so surveying that at your school, which is Scotch College over in Adelaide, have you seen that impact and a change in attitudes?
Definitely. Yeah. I think especially from, 2 years ago when it really started becoming a big thing, people were heaps more hesitant then.
Yes.
Whereas now, with some education and awareness around it, people are firstly more skilled in using it and more willing to it and more aware of the potential it has.
Yeah. Great. Fantastic. And another question for you, a final question, is what keeps you up at night?
Oh, that's a big one. I think it's just, from my point of view, we have such a short window where we can decide how AI is defined in our lives to some extent. And I think if we don't reach out and take that opportunity in that small window, it's going to be algorithms and companies and people who aren't best representative of everyone who are making those decisions for us. And I think, AI has such potential, but we really need to harness that. And so having the right people at the table making those decisions is so important. And I think students are such an essential part of that.
Excellent. I think you're spot on. Agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And for joining our panel tonight. It was a fabulous event.
Thank you.
Thanks.